Nia Carter had exactly $43 in her checking account when she stopped to help a dying stranger on a dark street corner, choosing compassion over the exam that could save her scholarship. While bystanders recorded on their phones, she used her nursing training to keep the elderly man alive, unaware that he was Arthur Hale, father of billionaire Adrian Hale. She didn't know that saving his life would cost her everything. Her scholarship revoked, her professor marking her as failed, her entire future crumbling overnight. And she certainly didn't know that her one act of kindness would ignite a dangerous war against corruption, so deep it threatened to destroy her completely. But when the system designed to crush people like her showed its true face, Nia had to decide: stay silent and disappear, or fight back against forces more powerful than she ever imagined. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. Nia Carter had exactly $43 in her checking account when she walked out of County General Hospital at 11:27 on a Tuesday night. The late shift at the clinic paid minimum wage, but it was steady work. And steady mattered more than anything when you were 21 years old and responsible for keeping your younger brother fed, housed, and in school. She pulled her jacket tighter against the October chill and started the familiar walk home through downtown. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, weighed down by textbooks she desperately needed to study from tonight. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp, she had her pharmacology midterm, worth 40% of her final grade. Professor Hawthorne had made himself crystal clear on the first day of class. Anyone late or absent fails. No exceptions. He'd stared directly at Nia when he said it, or at least it had felt that way. Her phone buzzed with a text from Malik. "Did you eat? There's leftover rice." She smiled despite her exhaustion. Her 16-year-old brother tried so hard to take care of her, too, even though she was supposed to be the parent now. Their mother had passed away 2 years ago from complications with diabetes, and their father had disappeared long before that, leaving nothing but empty promises and unpaid bills. Nia had dropped out of school for a year to work full-time, saving every penny until she could afford to go back. Now she was clawing her way through nursing school with a scholarship that demanded she maintain a 3.5 GPA or lose everything. She couldn't lose everything. Not when Malik was finally doing well in school, not when they'd just scraped together enough for rent this month, not when she was so close to actually building a real future for them both. The usual route home took her past the bus station and through a well-lit commercial district. But tonight she was running late, and tomorrow's exam loomed like a storm cloud. She cut through Lexington Street instead. Quieter, darker, but it would save her 10 minutes she desperately needed for studying. Halfway down the block, she heard the screech of tires. A luxury sedan, something sleek and silver that probably cost more than 3 years of her rent, swerved violently, jumped the curb, and slammed into a streetlight with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. Nia froze for half a second, her heart hammering, then broke into a run. The driver's side door hung open. A man in an expensive suit lay crumpled on the sidewalk, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. He looked to be in his 70s, white hair perfectly groomed even in crisis, gold watch glinting under the streetlight. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" Nia dropped to her knees beside him, her clinical training kicking in automatically. She reached for his wrist, pulse present but weak and irregular. His face was slack on the right side, his right eyelid drooping noticeably. Stroke. The word blazed through her mind like a fire alarm. "Someone call 911!" she shouted, looking around wildly. A small crowd had gathered, 4 people, maybe 5. But instead of helping, they stood at a distance with their phones held up, recording. Recording. Like this was entertainment instead of a human being's life hanging in the balance. "Stop filming and call an ambulance." Nia's voice cracked with fury and desperation. "Now." One woman finally lowered her phone and dialed, her fingers shaking. Nia turned back to the man. His lips were moving, trying to form words, but only garbled sounds emerged. "Don't try to talk," she said firmly, gently positioning his head to keep his airway open. "I'm a nursing student. I'm going to help you. Can you squeeze my hand?" His left hand gripped weakly. His right didn't respond at all. "Good, that's good. Keep breathing. Look at me. Stay with me, okay?" She checked for bleeding, monitored his breathing, watched for any sign of seizure activity. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. She talked to him constantly, keeping him conscious, keeping him focused on her voice, on staying present in his body even as it betrayed him. She heard sirens in the distance. Thank God. The paramedics arrived in a burst of flashing lights and efficient movement. A woman with kind eyes and competent hands knelt beside Nia. What happened? Possible stroke. Right-sided facial drooping, slurred speech, right-sided weakness. Pulse is weak and thready. He's been conscious this whole time, but disoriented. Nia rattled off the information like she'd been trained to do, clinical and clear despite her shaking hands. "You're a nurse. Student, second year." The paramedic glanced at her partner as they loaded the man onto a stretcher. "You just bought him time. Good work." They were gone within minutes, the ambulance screaming away into the night. Nia stood on the sidewalk, suddenly aware that her knees hurt from kneeling on concrete, that her hands were trembling, that her heart was still racing like she'd run a marathon. She pulled out her phone to check the time. 12:14 a.m. She'd been there for almost an hour. Her pharmacology notes were scattered across the sidewalk, trampled and torn. Her carefully highlighted textbook had fallen into a puddle and was ruined. And tomorrow's exam started in less than 8 hours. No, no, no. The word came out as a whisper, then louder. No. But there was nothing she could do now except go home and try to salvage what little study time remained. She barely remembered the walk back to their small duplex. Malik was still awake, gaming on his ancient laptop. But he took one look at her face and turned it off. "What happened?" "I helped someone. I'll tell you tomorrow. I need to study." She sat at their cramped kitchen table with a mug of instant coffee and tried to focus, but the words swam on the pages. Her mind kept replaying the man's face, the crowd recording instead of helping, the weight of knowing she'd done the right thing, even though it might cost her everything. At some point, exhausted beyond measure, she set her phone alarm and let her head drop onto her folded arms. When she jolted awake, sunlight was streaming through the kitchen window. Her phone was dead. She grabbed Malik's to check the time. 8:23 a.m. The exam had started 23 minutes ago. No. She was already running, grabbing her bag, not even bothering with shoes before jamming her feet into sneakers. "Malik, I overslept. I have to go." She ran the entire mile and a half to campus, her lungs burning, her vision blurring with tears and panic. The nursing building loomed ahead. She burst through the doors and sprinted down the hallway to Professor Hawthorne's classroom. The door was closed. She yanked it open anyway. Every head in the room turned toward her. Professor Hawthorne stood at the front, a tall man in his 50s with steel-gray hair and a permanent expression of disdain. "Miss Carter, how nice of you to join us." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Professor Hawthorne, I'm so sorry. There was an emergency last night. A man collapsed. I had to help him. The exam began 23 minutes ago. I know, but please, if I could just..." The rules were clear from day one. Anyone late or absent receives a failing grade. No exceptions. He pulled out his gradebook and made a deliberate mark with his pen. "You failed. Please." Her voice broke. She was aware of every student watching, of the humiliation burning her face red, but she couldn't stop. "I saved someone's life. I did what you taught us to do. I used my training to help someone who was dying. And you chose to sacrifice your academic standing to do so. That was your choice, Miss Carter. He turned back to the class. Everyone else, you have 37 minutes remaining. Nia stood there for another moment, frozen, before backing out of the room. The door clicked shut behind her, with a finality that felt like a coffin closing. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Huge, gasping sobs that tore out of her chest. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Her phone, now charged from the emergency power bank in her bag, buzzed with an email notification. Subject: Scholarship status. Urgent. Dear Miss Carter, this is to inform you that your academic scholarship has been flagged for immediate review following a failing grade in a required course. Per university policy, scholarships are revoked if GPA falls below 3.5. A formal review will be conducted, but in the interim, your scholarship status is suspended. The bathroom spun around her. She gripped the sink, staring at her reflection, eyes red and swollen, face pale with shock. One failed exam. One night of doing the right thing. And her entire future had just evaporated. She made it through the rest of the day in a fog. She went to her other classes. She went to her shift at the clinic, moving through patient care like a robot. When she finally got home that evening, Malik was waiting with Chinese takeout he'd bought with money from his part-time job at the grocery store. "You okay?" he asked carefully. She wanted to tell him everything. That they might lose the apartment, that she might have to drop out, that all the sacrifices she'd made and all the late nights studying might have been for nothing. But she couldn't put that weight on a 16-year-old who'd already lost so much. "Just a rough day. I'm fine." They ate in silence, some sitcom playing in the background that neither of them watched. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Irritated, she answered. "Hello? Is this Nia Carter?" The voice was male, smooth, professional. "Yes." "Who's this?" "Miss Carter. My name is Adrian Hale. You saved my father's life last night. I'd like to meet you and thank you in person." She hung up. It had to be a scam. She'd read about those. People who preyed on good Samaritans who found out personal information and used it for identity theft or worse. The phone rang again. "Look, I don't know who you are, but you're a nursing student at Metropolitan University. You work part-time at County General Hospital and at the campus clinic. You live with your younger brother, Malik. Last night at approximately 11:30, you stopped to help a man who'd suffered a stroke on Lexington Street." He paused. "That man was my father, Arthur Hale, and I owe you more than I can express." Nia's blood ran cold. "How do you know all that about me?" "I know you missed your exam this morning. I know your scholarship has been suspended. I know that the professor who failed you did so without considering the circumstances." His voice remained calm, almost gentle. "I'd like to help. I don't need your help." She hung up again, her hands shaking. Malik looked at her with wide eyes. "Who was that?" "Nobody, just a weird call." But the next morning, when she looked out the window while making coffee, there was a black luxury sedan parked on their street. As she watched, a driver in a suit stepped out and walked up their cracked sidewalk. He knocked on the door. Malik answered before Nia could stop him. "Miss Nia Carter?" the driver asked formally. "That's my sister. I have a delivery for her from Mr. Adrian Hale." He held out a thick manila envelope. Nia appeared behind Malik. "I didn't order anything." Nevertheless, he pressed the envelope into her hands and returned to the car. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter on heavy cream paper, with an embossed letterhead, a business card that felt like it was made of actual gold, and a check. The check was for $50,000. Malik saw it over her shoulder and gasped. "Nia, is that real?" She stared at it, at the elegant handwriting, at the signature, Adrian Hale. Then she picked it up and tore it in half. "Nia, what are you doing?" My education is not for sale, she said quietly, fiercely. She tore it again and again until it was confetti in her hands. I don't care how much money he has. I don't need anyone's charity. But your scholarship, I'll figure it out. She didn't know how, but she'd find a way. She always did. That evening, she was doing homework with Malik when he suddenly pointed at the television. Nia, isn't that? The news was on. A reporter stood outside a hospital speaking into a microphone. Arthur Hale, father of tech billionaire Adrian Hale, is in stable condition tonight after suffering a stroke earlier this week. Sources say a young woman stopped to provide life-saving first aid before paramedics arrived. The Hale family has not released her identity, but has said they're deeply grateful. The camera cut to footage of Arthur Hale being wheeled out of the hospital. The same elderly man Nia had knelt beside on that sidewalk. That's him, she whispered. Who? The man I helped. She looked at the confetti pieces of the check still scattered on their table. Oh God, what did I just do? The next morning, another car arrived. But this time it wasn't a driver. It was Adrian Hale himself. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s, dressed in an immaculate dark suit with sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. He knocked once, firmly. Malik opened the door again and nearly dropped his cereal bowl. Nia, that guy from TV is here. Nia came to the door, her heart pounding. Up close, Adrian Hale was even more intimidating. Tall, composed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to question whether you belonged in a room. Miss Carter, may I come in? I tore up your check. I know. I saw the pieces in your recycling bin. The faintest hint of amusement crossed his face. May I come in anyway? She stepped aside reluctantly. Their living room suddenly felt even smaller and shabbier with him in it. The sagging couch, the water-stained ceiling, Malik's schoolbooks piled on a TV tray. Adrian looked around once, his expression unreadable, then focused entirely on Nia. You saved my father's life. According to the paramedics and the ER doctors, without your intervention, he would have died or suffered permanent brain damage. I owe you more than money can repay. But since that's what I have, I'd like to offer it to you. Tell me what you need. I don't want your money. Then tell me what you want. She almost laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. I want my exam back. I want my scholarship restored. I want Professor Hawthorne to actually listen to me instead of treating me like I'm disposable. She crossed her arms. Can you give me that? Yes, Adrian said simply. She blinked. What? I can give you all of that. It might take time, but I can do it. He pulled out his phone. I've already started looking into Professor Hawthorne's history. Did you know he has a complaint filed against him every semester? Did you know minority students fail his classes at 3 times the rate of white students? Nia's stomach twisted. That doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't, because he's been doing it for years and the university has been protecting him. Adrian's voice remained calm, but something cold flickered in his eyes. I'd like your permission to investigate further. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care this much? Because you saved my father when no one else would. Because you risked your future to do the right thing. Because... He paused, and for the first time his composure cracked slightly. Because my mother died when I was 19, and no one fought for her the way you fought for my father. The silence that followed felt heavy, weighted with grief on both sides. Finally, Nia said, I don't want to be your charity case. I don't want special treatment. I just want fairness. Then that's what I'll get you. He handed her a new business card, just his name and phone number. Call me if anything changes. In the meantime, I'd like you to meet my father. He's been asking about you. After Adrian left, Malik turned to Nia with wide eyes. That was the most intense thing I've ever seen. Tell me about it. She stared at the business card in her hand, wondering if she'd just made a deal with the devil or found an unexpected ally. 4 days later, Arthur Hale himself came to visit. He arrived in the afternoon, moving slowly with a cane, his right side still weak but his eyes bright and alert. Nia opened the door to find him standing there with a bouquet of flowers and tears in his eyes. "You saved my life," he said simply. "May I thank you properly?" They sat in her small living room, Arthur on the couch, Nia in the armchair, Malik hovering nearby pretending not to listen. Arthur told her about the stroke, about waking up in the hospital with his son beside him, about the doctors explaining how close he'd come to dying. "Adrian told me you lost your scholarship," Arthur said quietly. "Because of me. Not because of you, because I made a choice. The right choice. Always the right choice." He reached out and took her hand. "My son can be cold sometimes, difficult. But he never forgets a debt and he never breaks a promise. If he said he'll help you, he will." After Arthur left, Nia felt something shift inside her, not hope exactly, but maybe the absence of complete despair. But then the media found out. Someone leaked the story. Poor black student saves billionaire's father, loses scholarship. Within 48 hours, reporters were camped outside her duplex. Her phone rang constantly with interview requests. The university suddenly wanted to feature her in promotional materials. She refused everything and stayed inside with the curtains drawn. Professor Hawthorne, meanwhile, doubled down. He filed a formal complaint claiming Nia had forged clinical attendance hours, a charge that could get her not just failed, but expelled entirely. When the official summons came for her to appear before an academic review board, Nia sat on her bed and cried until there were no tears left. That evening, her phone rang. "Adrian Hale. They're trying to destroy you," he said without preamble. "Hawthorne knows I'm investigating him, so he's escalating before I can expose what he's been doing." "What am I supposed to do?" Her voice came out small, defeated. "You fight back, and you let me help you do it." "I can't." "Nia." His voice was firm but not unkind. "You saved my father's life. You made a choice that cost you everything because it was the right thing to do. Let me make a choice now. Let me fight for you the way you fought for him." She closed her eyes. Malik was in the next room trying to focus on homework instead of worrying about her. Their rent was due in 2 weeks. Her future hung by a thread that was fraying fast. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Good, I'll be in touch soon." But she didn't expect what came next. 3 days later, she sat suspended from classes pending the academic review. The investigation would take weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, she had no income from her campus clinic job, no way to pay tuition, even if she was cleared. Malik found her crying on the balcony after midnight. "This is my fault," he said, his voice thick with tears. "If I was older, if I could work more, you wouldn't have to." "Don't." She pulled him into a fierce hug. "This is not your fault. None of this is your fault." But inside, she wondered if anything would ever be okay again. The next evening, they were eating cheap ramen for the 3rd night in a row when something strange happened. The walls vibrated. Malik looked up, confused. "What's that?" The vibration grew stronger, accompanied by a rhythmic thumping sound. Then light flooded through their kitchen window, bright white light like a spotlight. Nia ran to look outside and froze. A helicopter was landing in their yard. "Nia," Malik's voice was half terror, half awe. "They're here for you." The blades slowed as the aircraft settled onto their scrubby lawn, flattening the grass and sending dirt swirling through the air. Nia stood at the window, her heart hammering, watching as the door opened. A figure stepped out, silhouetted against the helicopter's lights. Adrian Hale. He walked toward their house with purposeful strides, and even from the window, Nia could see his expression was deadly serious. Whatever was coming next, it was going to change everything. The helicopter blades slowed to a steady whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. as Naya stepped onto her front porch, shielding her eyes against the spotlight. Adrian Hale emerged from the aircraft with a man in a black suit following close behind, both moving with military precision across her yard. "Pack a bag," Adrian said without preamble when he reached her. "Both of you, you're coming with me." Nia backed up a step, her defenses rising immediately. "Excuse me? You can't just land a helicopter in my yard and tell me what to do." "I didn't ask you to interfere in my life," she continued, her voice sharp despite the tremor underneath. "I didn't ask for any of this." Adrian's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but urgency. "Your university is about to expel you by morning. The Academic Review Board has been pressured to fast-track your hearing, and Hawthorne has convinced them you're a liability. You don't have time to argue with me." He held out a manila folder, thick with documents. Nia took it with shaking hands and opened it under the porch light. Inside were printed emails, internal university memos, recorded transcripts. Her eyes skimmed the words. "Minority students create complications. Hawthorne has requested expedited removal. Media attention cannot continue." "How did you get these?" she whispered. "I have resources, and right now, those resources are the only thing standing between you and complete destruction of your academic career." Adrian's voice softened slightly. "Hawthorne is going into hiding. He knows I'm closing in on him, so he's trying to eliminate evidence that could clear your name permanently. I need you present when everything comes out so no one can twist the story or claim you were manipulated." Malik appeared in the doorway behind Nia, his eyes wide. "Nia, maybe we should listen to him." "Malik, this is insane. You've protected me my whole life." Malik interrupted, his voice cracking with emotion. "You've sacrificed everything for me. Just this once. Let someone help us. Please." Nia looked between her brother and the billionaire standing in her yard, then at the documents in her hands that proved how deep the corruption ran. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to maintain her independence, to not become another charity case for a wealthy man's guilt. But Malik was right. She was drowning, and pride wouldn't save her. "Fine," she said quietly. "Give us 10 minutes." They packed quickly, Malik grabbing his laptop and homework, Nia throwing clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag with trembling hands. She caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, face gaunt from stress and skipped meals. She looked like someone who'd been fighting a war and losing. Maybe that's exactly what she was. The helicopter ride was surreal. Nia sat rigid in her seat, the headset Adrian had provided doing little to muffle the roar of the blades. Below them, the city spread out in a glittering grid of lights. Malik pressed his face to the window like a kid at Christmas, momentarily forgetting their circumstances in the wonder of flight. Adrian sat across from them, typing rapidly on his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. He glanced up once, caught Nia's eye, and said through the headset, "This isn't charity, it's justice." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. They landed on the roof of a massive glass building, Hale Industries, the letters glowing through the night fog in letters 20 feet tall. The suit-clad man who'd accompanied Adrian helped them out of the helicopter and led them to a private elevator that descended smoothly into the building's upper floors. "Where are we going?" Nia asked. "War room," Adrian replied simply. The elevator doors opened onto a conference room that looked like something from a spy movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Multiple screens lined one wall, currently displaying what looked like spreadsheets, emails, and financial documents. At least 6 people were already there. Lawyers in expensive suits, a woman with multiple laptops open in front of her, 2 men who looked like private investigators. They all stood when Adrian entered. "Everyone, this is Nia Carter and her brother Malik. Nia, this is my legal team and my private investigation unit. They've been working around the clock since my father's stroke. Adrian gestured to the screens. Show her what you found. One of the investigators, a black woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit, stepped forward. Miss Carter, my name is Patricia Reynolds. I've been investigating Professor James Hawthorne for the past week. What we've uncovered goes far beyond bias. The screens lit up with documents. Nia's eyes widened as she read. Grade changes, deleted student complaints, financial transactions. Hawthorne has been taking bribes, Patricia continued. Wealthy parents pay him to lower grades for students he deems undesirable. His word, not mine. Creating opportunities for their own children. We've identified at least 30 instances over the past 5 years, totaling over $200,000 in unreported income. My God, Nia breathed. There's more. Another investigator brought up a new document. He specifically targets minority students, particularly Black and Hispanic. Students in nursing and pre-med programs. His failure rate for white students is 12%. For students of color, it's 43%. Malik whispered, "That's not possible. It's not just possible, it's systematic." Patricia's voice was hard. He's been doing this for years, and the university has been covering for him because he brings in research grants and has connections with wealthy donors. Adrian stepped forward, his hands in his pockets, his expression carved from stone. Tomorrow morning, we present all of this to the State Education Board, the university administration, and the press. Every document, every transaction, every deleted complaint. They will answer for what they did to you. Nia sank into one of the conference room chairs, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. I don't understand. Why would you do all this? This must have cost. Don't worry about the cost. Adrian's voice was firm. My father is alive because of you. This is the least I can do. But there was something else in his voice, something that suggested his motivations ran deeper than simple gratitude. Before Nia could ask, one of the lawyers approached with a stack of papers. Miss Carter, we need you to review your statement for tomorrow's hearing. We've outlined the key points, but you'll need to speak in your own words. The next hour was a blur of legal briefings, reviewing evidence, and practicing her testimony. Malik fell asleep on a leather couch in the corner, exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the evening. Nia envied him. Her mind was racing too fast for sleep, processing everything she'd learned, trying to believe this was really happening. Around 2 in the morning, Adrian found her standing by the windows, staring out at the sleeping city. You should rest, he said quietly. Tomorrow will be intense. I can't sleep. I keep thinking this is some kind of dream, or a trick, or... She turned to face him. Why are you really doing this for me? Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. Because you saved the only parent I have left, and because no one ever saved me when I needed it most. Before she could ask what he meant, he walked away, leaving her alone with her questions and the sleeping city spread out below. A few hours later, they were taken to a luxury hotel where Adrian had reserved a suite. Nia barely registered the opulence. The marble bathroom, the king-sized beds, the view that rivaled the one from Hale Industries. She collapsed onto the bed fully clothed and fell into a fitful sleep. She woke to find Arthur Hale sitting in a chair by the window, his cane resting against the armrest. Morning light streamed through the curtains and Malik was still asleep in the other room. I'm sorry, Arthur said gently when he saw her stir. I didn't mean to startle you. The concierge let me in. Nia sat up disoriented. What time is it? 6:30. The hearing is at 9. He studied her face with grandfather-like concern. How are you holding up? I'm terrified, she admitted. What if this doesn't work? What if they still expel me? Arthur stood slowly and moved to sit on the edge of the bed. He took her hand in his weathered one, the same hand that had gripped hers weakly that night on the sidewalk, now stronger but still trembling slightly. My son can be cold, calculating, even ruthless when he needs to be, Arthur said. But he's never failed when he sets his mind to something. And he's set his mind to protecting you. He paused. I'm proud of what you did for me. No matter what happens today, you need to know that. You saw a stranger suffering and you helped, even though it cost you everything. That's character that can't be taught. Tears pricked Nia's eyes. Thank you. No. Thank you. He squeezed her hand. Now go get ready. Show them who you really are. By 8:30, they were back at Metropolitan University. The campus looked different than it had just days ago. News vans lined the streets, protesters held signs demanding justice, students clustered in groups whispering and pointing. As Adrian's SUV pulled up to the administration building, Nia felt her stomach clench with anxiety. Stay close to me, Adrian instructed as they exited the vehicle. Arthur was on her other side, Malik just behind them, and Patricia and two other members of Adrian's team brought up the rear. Camera flashes erupted as they walked toward the building. Reporters shouted questions that Nia couldn't process. Someone yelled, "Are you going to sue the university?" Another called out, "Is it true you're dating Adrian Hale?" Nia kept her eyes forward, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. Inside the administration building was chaos. Students lined the hallways, some cheering as Nia passed, others staring with curiosity or suspicion. Faculty members whispered behind hands. Security guards stood at every intersection, their expressions tense. The hearing room was larger than Nia expected, more like a small auditorium than a conference room. The academic review board sat at a long table at the front. 5 professors, the dean of nursing, and the university president. Journalists filled the back rows, cameras ready. Student representatives sat on one side and on the other. Professor Hawthorne. He looked terrible. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his suit rumpled, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. When he saw Nia enter with Adrian and Arthur Hale, his face went from pale to ashen. "Miss Carter," the university president said, his voice echoing through the space, "please take a seat." Nia sat at the designated table, Adrian settling in beside her with Patricia on his other side. The lawyers arranged documents in front of them with military precision. The president cleared his throat. "We're here to address serious allegations of academic misconduct against Nia Carter, a second-year nursing student, as well as questions regarding the circumstances of her failing grade in Professor Hawthorne's pharmacology course. Professor Hawthorne, would you like to present your case first?" Hawthorne stood on shaky legs. "Thank you, Mr. President. I've been teaching at this institution for 23 years. In all that time, I've maintained the highest academic standards. Miss Carter failed to appear for a mandatory examination. An examination I made clear from day one would have no makeups, no exceptions. She then fabricated attendance records, and that's a lie." Nia's voice rang out before she could stop herself. Every eye in the room turned to her. Adrian touched her arm gently, a reminder to stay calm, but she was done being silent. "I never fabricated anything. I missed one exam because I was saving your father's life." She pointed at Arthur Hale. "Ask the paramedics. Ask the hospital. Ask anyone except him because he's been lying for years." Hawthorne's face flushed red. "This is exactly the kind of disrespectful, attention-seeking behavior that—" "Enough." Adrian stood, and the room went silent. There was something commanding about him, an authority that transcended wealth or status. "Mr. President, members of the board, we have evidence that Professor Hawthorne has been engaged in systematic discrimination, academic fraud, and bribery for years. We also have evidence that the university administration has been aware of these activities and has chosen to protect him rather than the students he's been harming." Gasps rippled through the audience. The university president's face went from professional politeness to tight-lipped fury. Mr. Hale, those are serious accusations, which is why we brought serious evidence. Patricia stood and gestured to her team, who began distributing thick folders to each board member. Inside those folders, you'll find documentation of 37 separate incidents of Professor Hawthorne accepting money from parents in exchange for manipulating student grades. You'll find records of over 100 student complaints that were filed and subsequently deleted from university records. You'll find statistical analysis showing that Professor Hawthorne fails minority students at a rate 3.5 times higher than white students, despite those students having equal or higher GPAs in other courses. The room erupted. Board members flipped through folders, their faces growing increasingly grim. Students in the audience began shouting questions. Reporters leaned forward, frantically typing. Hawthorne stood frozen at his table, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "This is preposterous," he finally sputtered. "These documents are fabricated. This is a smear campaign orchestrated by whom?" Adrian's voice cut through the noise like a knife. "By me? Why would I fabricate evidence against a professor I'd never heard of until 2 weeks ago? Why would I spend considerable resources investigating someone unless I had good reason to believe they'd committed crimes?" He walked to the front of the room, commanding attention with every step. "The answer is simple. Your professor targeted Nia Carter because she's black, because she's poor, and because he thought she had no one to fight for her. He's done it to dozens of students before her, but this time, she happened to save my father's life. And I have the resources to expose what he's been doing." Adrian turned to face Hawthorne directly. "You failed Nia Carter because she missed an exam while performing life-saving first aid. You then fabricated misconduct charges to cover your tracks when you realized people were paying attention, and now all your sins are coming home to roost." The president called for order, banging his gavel repeatedly. "This hearing is temporarily suspended. Board members, we need an emergency closed session. Professor Hawthorne, you are required to remain on campus and available for questioning. Miss Carter, please wait outside." As they filed out of the hearing room, Nia felt disconnected from her body, like she was watching everything happen to someone else. Malik grabbed her hand, squeezing tight. Arthur walked beside her with quiet dignity. And Adrian looked like a man who'd just won a war. They waited in a side conference room for over an hour. Patricia brought coffee and pastries, though Nia couldn't eat. Her stomach was twisted in knots, her mind replaying Hawthorne's face when the evidence was presented. The shock, the fear, the rage. Finally, the door opened. The dean of nursing entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Miss Carter, the board would like to speak with you." Back in the hearing room, the atmosphere had completely changed. Hawthorne was no longer at his table. Whether he'd left or been removed, Nia didn't know. The board members looked exhausted and grim. The president spoke. "Miss Carter, after reviewing the evidence presented by Mr. Hale's team and conducting our own preliminary investigation, we've determined that Professor Hawthorne's accusations against you are baseless. Your exam grade will be reinstated with full credit. Your scholarship is fully restored, effective immediately. The university offers its sincere apologies for the distress this situation has caused." Relief flooded through Nia so powerfully she thought she might faint. Malik let out a whoop of joy. Arthur smiled broadly, and even Adrian's serious expression softened slightly. But the president wasn't finished. "Furthermore, Professor James Hawthorne is terminated effective immediately, pending criminal investigation by state authorities. The university will be conducting a comprehensive review of all his past grading decisions, and affected students will be notified and offered remediation." He paused, then said something Nia never expected. "Miss Carter, the board would like to offer you a position as a paid student advisor for our new equity initiative in the nursing program. We need voices like yours to help us identify and address systemic problems. If you're interested, we'd like to discuss the details." Nia stood there, stunned. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Malik whispered behind her. I'll need to think about it, she managed. Of course. Take all the time you need. The president stood and the rest of the board followed. Again, Miss Carter, we apologize. This should never have happened. As they left the building, Nia felt like she was walking on air. The nightmare was over. Her scholarship was restored. Hawthorne was gone. Students she'd never met stopped her to say congratulations, to thank her for exposing the corruption, to tell her their own stories of Hawthorne's cruelty. But when she looked at Adrian, she saw that his expression had grown distant again, troubled in a way that made her uneasy. What's wrong? She asked as they reached the SUV. Nothing. Everything went exactly as planned. But he wouldn't meet her eyes. Arthur noticed too. Adrian, you should tell her. Tell me what? Nia demanded. Not here, not now. Adrian opened the car door for her. Let's get you home first. The ride back to her duplex was quiet, the earlier jubilation fading into an uncomfortable tension. When they pulled up to her house, the grass still flattened where the helicopter had landed. Adrian finally spoke. I'd like to invite you and Malik to dinner tomorrow night, at my father's estate. There's something I need to tell you, but I'd rather do it properly. Adrian, you're scaring me. What is it? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability, fear, maybe even shame. Tomorrow, he said quietly. I promise. That evening, as Nia and Malik celebrated with cheap pizza, all they could afford until her scholarship money came through, her phone exploded with messages, friends congratulating her, former classmates thanking her for exposing Hawthorne, news outlets requesting interviews, and one message that made her blood run cold. Unknown number. You think you won? You destroyed a man's life because a billionaire wanted to play hero. Enjoy it while it lasts. She deleted it, trying to ignore the chill that ran down her spine. The next day at campus, the mood was celebratory, but Nia couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about Adrian's evasiveness bothered her. What could he possibly need to tell her that required a formal dinner invitation? The Hale estate was unlike anything Nia had ever seen. The car drove through gates that looked like they belonged to a museum, up a winding driveway lined with sculpted trees, finally stopping in front of a mansion that seemed to glow in the evening light. Glass walls revealed multiple stories of elegant rooms, and a grand piano was visible in what appeared to be a music hall. Malik's eyes were the size of dinner plates. This is insane. A butler, an actual butler, greeted them at the door and led them through hallways adorned with original artwork to a formal dining room where Arthur and Adrian waited. The meal was exquisite. Courses Nia couldn't name, served on china that probably cost more than her entire kitchen, but she barely tasted it. Adrian was withdrawn, barely speaking, while Arthur tried to maintain conversation and keep the mood light. Finally, over dessert, Nia set down her fork. Okay, that's enough. Adrian, you said you needed to tell me something, so tell me. Adrian exchanged a glance with his father, then took a deep breath. I didn't help you just because you saved my father's life. I mean, that's part of it, but not all of it. Then what? Years ago, when I was 19, I was accepted into a prestigious medical research program. I wanted to become a doctor, like my mother had been. But then she got sick, cancer, and she needed experimental treatment that our insurance wouldn't cover. I dropped out of the program to work and pay for her care. He paused, his jaw clenching. A professor named Dr. Elaine Caldwell had been mentoring me. When I tried to return after my mother died, she'd given my spot to another student, the son of a wealthy donor. She claimed I'd abandoned the program, that I'd lost my commitment. She manipulated my grades, destroyed my recommendations. I had no recourse, no one to fight for me. Nia's chest tightened with understanding. I spent years trying to expose academic corruption after that. Adrian continued. Not publicly. I built my company, made my money, and used it to fund investigations into universities where I suspected similar problems. I've helped dozens of students, but always anonymously, always from the shadows. When I saw what Hawthorne did to you, his voice roughened, you reminded me of my mother. She was a nurse before she became a doctor. She dedicated her life to helping people even when it hurt her. When I saw you sacrifice your education to save my father, I couldn't walk away. The room was silent except for the gentle clink of crystal when Arthur reached for his water glass. So this whole time, Nia said slowly, you weren't just repaying a debt, you were fighting a war you never got to finish yourself. Something like that. Adrian finally met her eyes. I'm sorry I wasn't completely honest from the beginning. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. But Nia couldn't find it in herself to be angry. If anything, she felt a strange kinship with this complicated, damaged man who'd turned his pain into purpose. Thank you for telling me now. Over the next few days, as Nia's story spread, something unexpected happened. She became a symbol, not just at her university, but across the country. Students from other schools reached out with their own stories of discriminatory professors, manipulated grades, systemic bias. News outlets wanted her to speak about healthcare education, reform. Advocacy groups invited her to join their boards. It was overwhelming and humbling and terrifying all at once. But then, just when things seemed to be settling into a new normal, everything fell apart again. She woke one morning to her phone buzzing with notifications. Confused, she opened social media to find her name trending, but not for the reasons she expected. A gossip blog had published an article, Billionaire's New Girlfriend, Adrian Hale spotted with black student. He rescued, sources say. Relationship began before father's stroke. Nia's blood turned to ice as she read further. The article claimed she and Adrian had been secretly dating, that she'd staged the emergency to get close to his family, that her academic success was bought rather than earned. There were photos, carefully edited and taken out of context, of her getting into Adrian's car, of them at the university, of the helicopter landing at her house. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Malik came running when he heard her distressed cry. What's wrong? She showed him the article. Within minutes, it had been picked up by major news outlets, each adding their own spin. Some defended her, but others questioned everything. Her character, her motives, even whether she'd actually saved Arthur Hale or if that too had been staged. Her phone rang. Adrian. I'm so sorry, he said immediately. I'm working to get the article removed, but the damage is done. Nia felt sick. Everyone's going to think I used you. They're going to think I'm a liar and a fraud. No one who matters will believe that. We have evidence, witnesses. Adrian, most people don't care about evidence. They care about the story, and the story right now is that I'm some kind of gold digger who manipulated a billionaire family. Her voice broke. I should have known this would happen. I should have stayed away from all of you. Nia, don't. She hung up. The next few days were torture. She couldn't go to campus without being stared at or whispered about. Online comments were vicious, filled with racial slurs and accusations. Someone spray-painted gold digger on her front door. Malik came home from school with a black eye after defending her to classmates who called her a liar. She stopped answering her phone, stopped checking social media, stopped going to classes. She just sat in her dark living room feeling like the world had crushed her all over again. This time, in a way that couldn't be fixed with evidence or lawyers. Arthur came to see her, but she wouldn't open the door. Adrian called repeatedly, and she let every call go to voicemail. Even Patricia reached out, offering to help manage the media crisis, but Nia couldn't face any of them. She was done. Completely, utterly done. On the fourth day of her self-imposed isolation, A message notification popped up on her phone. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. You don't know the full story about Adrian Hale. Ask him what happened the night his mother died. Ask him what he did to the professor who destroyed his future. Nia stared at the message, a cold dread settling in her stomach. What did that mean? What hadn't Adrian told her? She tried to dismiss it as another troll, another person trying to tear her down. But the message lingered in her mind, growing larger and more ominous with each passing hour. Finally, at midnight, she called him. Nia, thank God. I've been trying to reach. What happened the night your mother died? The question came out flat, emotionless. Adrian went silent on the other end of the line. Adrian, what happened? Who told you to ask me that? His voice had gone cold, distant. Does it matter? Another long silence. Then, we need to talk in person. No, tell me now, or I'm done with all of this. Done with you, done with your father, done with everything. She heard him take a shaky breath. The night my mother died, I confronted Professor Caldwell. I was young, grieving, angry. I said things I shouldn't have said. I threatened her. Someone called security and I was arrested for harassment and making threats. The charges were eventually dropped, but it's on record. It's part of why I've worked anonymously all these years, because I don't want anyone to dig up that history and use it to discredit the people I'm trying to help. Nia closed her eyes. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Because I was ashamed. Because I knew if you found out you might not trust me, and I needed you to trust me so I could help you. He paused. I'm sorry. I should have been honest. Yeah, you should have been. She ended the call and threw her phone across the room, where it landed on the couch with a soft thud. Malik appeared in the doorway, his face bruised but concerned. Nia? I don't know what to do anymore, she whispered. I don't know who to trust. I don't know if anything is going to be okay. He sat beside her and took her hand, just like she'd done for him so many times over the years. We'll figure it out. We always do. But for the first time in her life, Nia wasn't sure that was true. The pounding on Nia's door came at 6 in the morning, jolting her awake from the couch where she'd fallen asleep fully clothed. For a moment, she considered not answering. It was probably another reporter, another person wanting to dissect her life for entertainment. But the knocking persisted, urgent and rhythmic. Nia Carter, a woman's voice called through the door. My name is Patricia Reynolds. I work for Adrian Hale. Please, it's an emergency. Nia stumbled to the door and cracked it open, the security chain still attached. Patricia stood on the porch, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled, her eyes urgent. What now? Nia asked bitterly. Hawthorne has resurfaced. He fled to another state and is preparing to release fabricated medical records claiming your first aid was negligent, that you actually harmed Arthur Hale. He's trying to destroy your nursing career before it even begins. Patricia's words came fast, desperate. Adrian has called an emergency meeting. We need you there in an hour. I don't want Adrian's help anymore. Then don't do it for him. Do it for yourself. Do it for every other student Hawthorne will target if we don't stop him now. Patricia held her gaze. You're stronger than this, Nia. Don't let them win by making you hide. Something in Patricia's words pierced through Nia's despair. She thought about all the messages she'd received from other students, the ones who'd thanked her for exposing corruption, who'd found courage in her story. If she gave up now, what message did that send? 1 hour, she said finally, and I'm bringing Malik. The war room at Hale Industries looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more functional. Adrian stood at the window with his back to the door when they entered, his posture rigid with tension. Arthur sat at the conference table looking older and more tired than Nia had seen him. Nia. Adrian turned and she saw the circles under his eyes, the exhaustion etched into his features. "Thank you for coming." "Don't thank me yet. I'm not sure I'm staying." He nodded, accepting that. "Fair enough. Let me show you what we're dealing with." Patricia brought up images on the screens, screenshots from a website that had gone live an hour ago, claiming to be a whistleblower site, exposing medical fraud by unqualified students. There were photos of Nia, distorted quotes attributed to paramedics, and what appeared to be official-looking medical documents claiming Arthur Hale had suffered additional injuries because of Nia's incompetent intervention. "This is insane," Malik breathed. "People will believe this?" "Some will," Patricia admitted, especially combined with the relationship rumors. Hawthorne is trying to paint Nia as both incompetent and opportunistic, someone who hurt a man and then seduced his son for money. Nia felt sick. "Where is he?" "We don't know exactly, but we have people looking." Adrian finally approached her, keeping a respectful distance. "Nia, I know you don't trust me right now. I don't blame you. But this goes beyond us. Hawthorne is dangerous and he won't stop until he's destroyed you completely. So what do you want me to do?" "Fight back, publicly." Adrian gestured to the screens. "We hold a press conference. We present all the evidence. Everything about Hawthorne's corruption, the real medical records from my father's treatment, testimony from the paramedics who were actually there. We control the narrative instead of letting him control it." "And what about your past?" Nia asked quietly. "What about the fact that you were arrested for threatening the professor who ruined your life? How does that look when you're standing beside me claiming to be some kind of savior?" The room went silent. Arthur looked at his son with sad eyes. Adrian's jaw clenched, but he didn't look away from Nia. "You're right. It looks bad. Which is why I'm going to admit it publicly." His voice was steady despite the pain in it. "I'm going to tell everyone exactly what I did, why I did it, and how it's shaped everything I've done since. No more secrets. No more hiding." "Adrian, that's professional suicide," one of the lawyers protested. "The board will—" "I don't care." Adrian cut him off. "I'm tired of letting shame dictate my choices. Nia deserves the full truth, and so does everyone else." Nia studied his face, looking for manipulation or calculation, but all she saw was raw sincerity. "You're really willing to sacrifice your reputation for this?" "I'm willing to sacrifice my reputation for you." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Because you deserve justice, and because I should have been honest from the beginning." Arthur spoke up, his voice gentle but firm. "Nia, my son is many things. Stubborn, sometimes cold, often too calculating for his own good. But he's not a liar, not anymore. If he says he'll stand with you, he will, even if it costs him everything." Malik tugged on Nia's sleeve. "I think we should do it. I'm tired of hiding, too." Nia looked around the room, at Patricia's determined expression, at the lawyers ready to fight, at Arthur's quiet dignity, at Adrian's vulnerable honesty. They were offering her a chance to take back control of her story, to stop being a victim and become someone who fought back. "Okay," she said finally, "but we do this my way. No more decisions without me. No more protecting me by keeping secrets. If we're doing this, we're doing it as equals." Adrian extended his hand. "Equals." She shook it, and for the first time in days, she felt something other than despair. She felt ready to fight. The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock at the university's main auditorium. Patricia's team worked frantically to prepare materials, to contact media outlets to ensure maximum coverage. Nia spent the morning writing her statement, revising it, practicing in front of the mirror until the words felt natural. Arthur found her in one of the conference rooms an hour before they were due to leave. He carried 2 cups of coffee and sat down beside her without asking permission. "I'm scared," Nia admitted. "Good. That means you understand the stakes. He sipped his coffee slowly. Can I tell you something about my son? I'm not sure I want to hear it right now. Too bad. I'm an old man and I'll talk if I want to. His eyes twinkled briefly before growing serious. When Adrian's mother died, something broke in him. He became obsessed with justice, with exposing corruption, with making sure no one else suffered the way she did. But he also became afraid. Afraid of connection, afraid of vulnerability, afraid that caring too much would destroy him the way losing her destroyed him. Arthur looked at her intently. You reminded him that caring is worth the risk, that saving someone, even if it costs you, is the right choice. He sees himself in you, the person he could have been if he'd held on to compassion instead of just anger. I'm not his redemption story, Nia said quietly. No, you're not. You're your own story. But maybe you both can be part of each other's healing. He stood, leaving the untouched coffee cup for her. No matter what happens today, I'm proud of you. My son is lucky to have you as an ally. The auditorium was packed when they arrived. Every seat was filled with reporters, students, faculty members, and curious onlookers. Cameras lined the back wall. The energy in the room was electric with anticipation. Nia walked onto the stage, flanked by Adrian and Arthur, with Patricia and the legal team behind them. Malik sat in the front row, his phone ready to record. She could see Professor Hawthorne's allies scattered through the audience. Other faculty members who'd benefited from his corrupt system, parents who'd paid for advantages for their children. Adrian stepped to the microphone first. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, I need to make something clear. I'm here today not just as Adrian Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, but as someone who understands what it's like to be crushed by an academic system that protects the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. He took a breath, and Nia saw his hands grip the podium. When I was 19, a professor destroyed my academic career because I chose to care for my dying mother instead of advancing her research agenda. I was young, angry, and grieving. I confronted her and I said things I deeply regret. I was arrested for making threats, and though the charges were dropped, that moment has haunted me for years. Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras clicked furiously. Adrian continued, his voice steady. I tell you this not to excuse my behavior, but to explain it. I've spent the past 15 years trying to make amends by exposing academic corruption wherever I find it. When Professor James Hawthorne targeted Nia Carter, it wasn't just an attack on one student. It was part of a pattern of systematic discrimination and fraud that has affected hundreds of students over decades. Patricia stepped forward and began presenting evidence on the large screens behind them. Bank records, deleted complaints, statistical analyses, testimony from former students. The audience watched in growing horror as the scope of Hawthorne's corruption was laid bare. Then it was Nia's turn. She approached the microphone with trembling hands but a steady voice. My name is Nia Carter. I'm a second-year nursing student, and 3 weeks ago, I saved a man's life. That decision cost me everything. My scholarship, my academic standing, my reputation. But I'd make the same choice again because that's what being a nurse means. You help people, even when it's hard, even when it costs you. She looked directly into the cameras. Professor Hawthorne didn't fail me because I was incompetent. He failed me because I was black, because I was poor, and because he thought I didn't matter. He's done it to dozens of other students whose names you'll never know, because they didn't have someone with Adrian Hale's resources to fight for them. Her voice grew stronger. I'm not Adrian Hale's girlfriend. I'm not his project or his redemption story. I'm a nursing student who wants fairness. I want every student to be judged on their merit, not their skin color or their bank account. I want professors held accountable when they abuse their power. And I want healthcare education that actually prepares us to care for all patients, not just the ones who look like us or have money. The room erupted in applause. Students stood, cheering. Even some of the reporters were nodding in approval. But then a voice cut through the noise. "This is all very touching, but where's your proof that Hawthorne specifically targeted minorities?" A man stood in the middle of the auditorium. Another professor, one Nia recognized from faculty photos. Patricia immediately brought up slides showing statistical breakdowns, grade distributions by race, patterns of failures and complaints. "Here's your proof," Patricia said coolly. 5 years of data showing Professor Hawthorne's failure rates, complaint patterns, and financial transactions. We've turned all of this over to state authorities who have issued a warrant for his arrest. "A warrant?" someone shouted. "As of this morning, Professor James Hawthorne is wanted for academic fraud, discrimination, bribery, and now for creating and distributing false medical records intended to damage Miss Carter's professional prospects." Patricia's voice was hard as steel. "We know he's fled the state, but we also know he won't be able to hide forever." Another person stood, a woman Nia didn't recognize. "What about the rumors that you and Adrian Hale were involved before any of this happened?" Adrian moved back to the microphone before Nia could respond. "Those rumors are categorically false and were deliberately spread to discredit Miss Carter. We have traced them back to an IP address registered to Professor Hawthorne. He created the false narrative to deflect from his own crimes." "Can you prove that?" the woman challenged. "Yes." Patricia gestured, and another team member distributed packets to the press. Inside those packets, you'll find forensic analysis of the original posts, communications between Hawthorne and the gossip blogger who first published the story, and financial records showing Hawthorne paid for the article. The room exploded with questions. Reporters shouted over each other. Students booed at the revelation. Faculty members who'd supported Hawthorne began quietly slipping out of the auditorium. Nia stepped back to the microphone. "I know some of you came here hoping for a scandal. Sorry to disappoint you. The only scandal here is that a racist professor was allowed to harm students for years while the university looked the other way. But that ends today." More applause, louder this time. Malik was on his feet in the front row, tears streaming down his face as he clapped. Arthur stood beside him, his expression proud. Adrian looked at Nia with something like awe. The university president appeared on stage, looking pale and shaken. "If I may?" He waited for silence. "On behalf of Metropolitan University, I want to offer Miss Carter our deepest apologies. The failures that allowed Professor Hawthorne's behavior to continue are institutional, and we take full responsibility. Effective immediately, we are implementing new oversight procedures, establishing an independent review board for grade appeals, and creating a diversity office with real authority to investigate discrimination complaints." He turned to Nia. "Miss Carter, we would be honored if you would accept the paid advisor position we discussed. Your voice and your perspective are exactly what our nursing program needs to ensure this never happens again." Nia didn't answer immediately. She looked at Malik, at Arthur and Adrian, at the sea of faces watching her. Then she said, "I'll accept on one condition, that the position comes with real power to make changes, not just a title to make the university look good. I want meaningful reform, not window dressing." "You have my word," the president said. "Then yes, I accept." The press conference lasted another hour, with Patricia fielding questions about the investigation, Adrian explaining his personal history more fully, and Nia answering questions about her experience and her vision for change. By the time they finally left the stage, Nia felt wrung out, but lighter than she'd felt in weeks. Outside the auditorium, students mobbed her. Some wanted to shake her hand. Others shared their own stories of discrimination or unfair treatment. One young black woman grabbed Nia's hands and said through tears, "Thank you. I was about to drop out because I thought I wasn't good enough, but you showed me the problem wasn't me." That moment made everything. The fear, the humiliation, the sleepless nights. Worth it. As they walked back to Adrian's SUV, Nia found herself beside him. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being honest today, for not hiding anymore. Thank you for giving me a reason to be honest." Adrian's voice was soft. "I meant what I said up there. You reminded me why I started fighting in the first place." "We're not done fighting," Nia warned. "Hawthorne is still out there, and there are probably other professors like him at other schools." "I know, but now we fight together." He smiled. A real smile, not the calculated corporate expression she'd seen before. As equals. That evening, they gathered at Arthur's estate for dinner again, but this time the mood was celebratory. Arthur insisted on cooking, producing a surprisingly good lasagna. Malik ate 3 helpings and explored the mansion like it was Disneyland. Patricia and her team joined them, along with several of the lawyers who'd worked on the case. "To Nia," Arthur said, raising his glass, "who saved my life and maybe saved my son's soul in the process." "I don't know about that." Nia laughed, but she raised her glass too. "To fairness, to justice, to fighting for what's right even when it's hard." They clinked glasses, and for the first time since the night she'd stopped to help a stranger on a dark street, Nia felt like maybe everything really would be okay. But then Patricia's phone rang. She stepped away to answer it, and when she returned, her face was grim. They found Hawthorne. He was arrested an hour ago trying to board a bus to Mexico. He had a laptop with him. She paused. He was preparing to release more fabricated evidence, including altered medical records and fake testimonies from paramedics. If we hadn't stopped him today, this could have gotten much worse. Nia felt Adrian's hand on her shoulder, steadying. "But you did stop him. We stopped him." "There's more," Patricia continued. "During questioning, Hawthorne claimed he was being paid by someone else. Someone higher up who wanted to discredit both you and Adrian. He's offering to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence." The celebration atmosphere evaporated. "Who?" Adrian demanded. He wouldn't say yet, but apparently, this goes deeper than we thought. Patricia looked at Nia apologetically. "I'm sorry. I thought this was over." Nia stood up, her jaw set with determination. "Then we keep fighting. Whatever comes next, we face it the way we faced this. Together and honestly." Arthur raised his glass again. "To the fight. May we always have the courage to see it through." Later that night, as Malik fell asleep on one of the estate's guest room beds, Nia stood on the balcony looking out at the city lights. Adrian found her there, 2 mugs of hot chocolate in his hands. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, offering her a mug. "Too much adrenaline still." She accepted the drink gratefully. "Adrian, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Your mother, what was she like?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. She was kind, brilliant. She believed that medicine was about service, not prestige. She used to volunteer at free clinics even after she became successful. He smiled sadly. "She would have liked you. You remind me of her, the way you put patients first, the way you fight for what's right, even when it costs you." "I'm sorry you lost her. I'm sorry you lost your mother, too." He met her eyes. "But I'm grateful that losing her led me to you. That sounds selfish, maybe, but it's true. You've given me something I thought I'd lost. Faith that there are still people worth fighting for." Nia felt tears prick her eyes. "You're not as cold as you pretend to be, you know." "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain." But he was smiling. They stood there together in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe below them. 2 people who'd found each other through tragedy and were slowly learning how to heal. Inside, Arthur watched them through the window and smiled. His son had finally found someone who understood him, who challenged him, who made him want to be better. And Nia had found allies who would fight for her, the way she'd always fought for others. The road ahead would be difficult. There were still investigations to complete, reforms to implement, and apparently more corruption to expose. But for tonight, they could rest in the knowledge that they'd won an important battle. And tomorrow, they would be ready to fight again. The days following Hawthorne's arrest felt surreal. Nia returned to classes and found herself treated like a celebrity. Students asking for photos, professors going out of their way to be accommodating, the dean personally checking in on her progress. It was overwhelming and sometimes uncomfortable, but it was better than being dismissed and discriminated against. Still, something nagged at her. Patricia's revelation about someone higher up paying Hawthorne lingered in her mind like an unfinished sentence, and Adrian had grown distant again, throwing himself into work, avoiding her calls, canceling their scheduled meetings about the university reforms. She tried not to take it personally, but it hurt. After everything they'd been through together, after the promises of honesty and partnership, he was pulling away. 2 weeks after the press conference, an elegant invitation arrived at her door. Thick cardstock with embossed gold lettering. Arthur Hale requested the pleasure of her and Malik's company for dinner at the estate. The note at the bottom, in Arthur's handwriting, read, "Please come, it's important." Malik was excited. He'd been talking non-stop about the mansion since their last visit, but Nia felt apprehensive as they drove through the gates that evening. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Arthur greeted them at the door himself, his smile warm, but his eyes troubled. "Thank you for coming. Adrian is waiting in the dining room." The formal dining room was as stunning as before, but this time the atmosphere felt heavy. Adrian stood by the window, his back to them, tension radiating from his rigid posture. He wore casual clothes instead of his usual suit, and his hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "Adrian," Arthur said gently, "they're here." Adrian turned and Nia's breath caught. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his face drawn with stress. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice hoarse. "What's going on?" Nia demanded. "You've been avoiding me for 2 weeks, and now this mysterious dinner invitation. Just tell me what's happening." "Sit down first, please." Arthur gestured to the table where food had been laid out. Comfort food this time, not fancy courses. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The kind of meal you served when you needed to deliver bad news gently. They ate in awkward silence for a few minutes, Malik glancing nervously between the adults. Finally, Arthur set down his fork with a decisive clink. "Adrian, tell her. She deserves to know the whole truth." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Father, no more delays. No more protecting yourself or me or anyone else. The truth. Now." Nia felt her stomach twist with dread. "Tell me what?" Adrian took a shaky breath, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "I haven't been completely honest with you. Not about everything. What else could there possibly be?" Nia's voice rose. "We've already covered your arrest, your mother's death, your vendetta against corrupt professors. What else is there? The reason I've been investigating academic corruption for years. The real reason." Adrian finally met her eyes, and what she saw there was raw pain and shame. "After my mother died and Professor Caldwell destroyed my academic future, I didn't just get angry. I got obsessed. I spent years digging into her background, her finances, her professional relationships. I found evidence that she'd been taking bribes from pharmaceutical companies to manipulate research results." Nia frowned. "Okay, so you exposed her?" "I tried, but she had powerful connections, university administration, corporate sponsors, politicians. Every time I presented evidence, it disappeared. Every complaint I filed was buried. She was untouchable." Adrian's voice grew harder. "Until she wasn't. What does that mean?" It means that 3 years after my mother's death, Professor Caldwell was killed in a car accident. Single vehicle collision, late at night, ruled accidental. He paused, but it wasn't an accident. The room went dead silent. Malik stopped eating mid-bite. Arthur closed his eyes, pain etched across his face. Nia felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "Are you telling me you—" "No," Adrian said sharply. "I didn't kill her. But someone did, and they made it look like an accident, and I know who ordered it because he told me himself." Arthur spoke quietly. "Tell her about Marcus." Adrian ran a hand over his face. "Marcus Caldwell. Professor Caldwell's husband. He was a venture capitalist, wealthy and connected. After her death, he approached me at my company. He said he knew what his wife had done to me, knew about the corruption and the bribes. He said he'd taken care of the problem for me, and now I owed him." Nia felt sick. What did he want? Information. Business intelligence. He wanted me to use my company's resources to dig up dirt on his competitors, to manipulate markets, to give him advantages in deals. He framed it as a mutual arrangement. I got justice for my mother and he got insider information. Adrian's voice broke. I said no. I told him to leave me alone, that I wanted nothing to do with him or what he'd done. But he wouldn't let it go. For years he's been trying to leverage what happened, trying to force me into working with him. "Oh my God," Nia whispered. "And you think he's connected to Hawthorne?" "I know he is." Patricia traced the payments Hawthorne was receiving. They came from a shell company registered to Marcus Caldwell. Adrian looked at her with haunted eyes. "Marcus went after you to get to me. He knew that if he could destroy you, someone I was publicly defending, it would damage my credibility and reputation enough that I'd have no choice but to cooperate with him to restore it." Malik found his voice. "That's insane. Why would he go to all that trouble?" "Because Adrian has refused to be corrupted," Arthur said softly. "My son has spent years exposing the kind of corporate and academic fraud that men like Marcus profit from. Marcus saw an opportunity to either control Adrian or destroy him. Either outcome would serve his purposes." Nia's mind raced, processing the implications. "So everything that happened to me, Hawthorne's escalation, the fake relationship rumors, the fabricated medical records, all of it was part of a plan to force you into working with a murderer?" "Yes." Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. "And I'm so sorry, Nia. If I'd known from the beginning that Marcus was behind this, I would have—" "What? Abandoned me?" Nia stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Let Hawthorne destroy my life so Marcus wouldn't have ammunition against you? No, I would have warned you, protected you differently, been honest about the danger." Adrian stood too, desperation in his voice. "I didn't figure out Marcus's involvement until a few days ago. Patricia only traced the payments last week. As soon as I knew, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without making everything worse. By avoiding me for 2 weeks? By shutting me out?" Nia's hands shook with anger and hurt. "We promised honesty, Adrian. We promised to be equals in this fight. I know. And I broke that promise because I was ashamed and scared." He took a step toward her. "Marcus Caldwell killed someone, and I never reported it. I never went to the police with my suspicions because I couldn't prove it, and because part of me was glad she was gone. That makes me complicit. That makes me—" "Human," Arthur interrupted firmly. "It makes you human, Adrian. You were young and grieving and angry. You're not responsible for Marcus's crimes, but I am responsible for not warning Nia that someone that dangerous might come after her." Adrian's voice cracked. "You could have been hurt. Malik could have been hurt, all because Marcus wanted leverage over me." Nia sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. Malik reached over and squeezed her hand. She looked at Adrian, really looked at him, and saw not the cold, calculating billionaire or the confident crusader, but a man who'd been carrying guilt and fear for years, who'd built walls around himself to avoid being vulnerable, who was terrified of caring about people because everyone he cared about got hurt. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Now we go after Marcus. Patricia's voice came from the doorway. She walked in carrying a laptop, her expression grim. Sorry to interrupt dinner, but you need to see this. She opened the laptop on the table, showing them an email thread. Marcus Caldwell sent this to Adrian's corporate email an hour ago. He's threatening to go public with a fabricated story claiming Adrian hired him to kill Professor Caldwell, that everything Adrian has done since, including helping you, Nia, has been to cover up his involvement in murder. Can he prove any of that? Malik asked. He doesn't need to prove it. He just needs to plant the seed of doubt. Patricia scrolled through more messages. He's also threatening to release doctored financial records showing payments from Adrian's company to his shell companies, making it look like they've been working together all along. Adrian slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. He's been planning this for years. Every time I refused him, he gathered more ammunition, and now he's going to destroy everything I've built and take Nia down with me. Unless we strike first, Nia said. Everyone turned to look at her. What are you thinking? Arthur asked. Nia's mind was racing, pieces clicking together. Marcus wants to control the narrative, right? He wants to make Adrian look guilty and discredit me in the process. But what if we flip it? What if we expose him first? Not just for paying Hawthorne, but for everything. His wife's murder, the bribes, the shell companies, all of it. We don't have enough evidence for the murder, Patricia said carefully. It was ruled an accident, and we can't prove otherwise without someone who has proof coming forward. Nia finished. What if there's someone else Marcus has been manipulating or threatening, someone who might be willing to testify if they knew they weren't alone? Adrian stared at her. That's brilliant. Marcus has been doing this for years. I can't be his only target. Patricia was already typing. I'll reach out to my contacts, see if anyone else in your industry has had run-ins with Marcus. If we can find even one person willing to talk, find them, Adrian said, whatever it takes. Over the next 3 days, Patricia's team worked around the clock. They identified 6 other business leaders who'd had suspicious dealings with Marcus Caldwell, 3 of whom agreed to speak off the record. The stories were consistent. Marcus approached them with information about competitors, offered deals that seemed too good to be true, then leveraged those deals to demand more and more until they were trapped. One woman, a tech CEO named Jennifer Brooks, admitted that Marcus had blackmailed her for 2 years before she finally paid him off and left the industry entirely. He destroyed my company and my reputation, she said during a video call, but I kept records. Everything. I was too scared to use them before, but if you're really going after him, I'll testify. With Jennifer's testimony and documents, plus the evidence linking Marcus to Hawthorne's payments, they had enough to go to the authorities. Patricia arranged a meeting with the district attorney, who listened with growing interest as they laid out the case. This is bigger than academic fraud, the DA said. If even half of what you're claiming is true, we're looking at racketeering, blackmail, conspiracy, potentially even murder. Will you investigate? Adrian asked. We're already starting. But I'll be honest. Marcus Caldwell has powerful friends. This won't be quick or easy. Nothing worth doing is, Nia said. That evening, as they prepared to leave the DA's office, Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. It's Marcus. He put it on speaker. Marcus Caldwell's voice was smooth and urbane. Adrian, I hear you've been busy, meeting with district attorneys, collecting testimony from business associates. Very thorough. What do you want, Marcus? To give you one last chance. Drop this investigation, and I'll let the girl go. Keep pursuing it, and I release everything. The fake financial records, the manufactured evidence linking you to my wife's death, and some very interesting fabricated medical records showing that Arthur Hale's stroke was actually caused by medications Adrian provided. Your choice. Adrian's hands shook with rage. You're insane. I'm practical. You have until tomorrow at noon. After that, I go public, and both your lives are over. The line went dead. Nia felt like she'd been punched. He's going to claim you caused your father's stroke. It doesn't matter what he claims, Arthur said firmly. We have the truth and we have allies now. We fight. But Adrian looked devastated. Maybe I should just give him what he wants. I can't let him hurt you or my father anymore. No. Nia grabbed his arm. That's exactly what he wants, for you to give up, to let guilt and fear control you. But we're past that now. We fight together, remember? Adrian searched her face. Why are you still willing to fight for me after everything I've dragged you into? Because you fought for me when no one else would. Because you taught me that having resources and power means nothing if you don't use them to protect people who need protection. She squeezed his arm. And because we're friends now, and friends don't abandon each other. Something in Adrian's expression softened. Friends. I've never been very good at those. Well, you're stuck with me now, so you'd better learn. She turned to Patricia. What's our move? Patricia smiled, a fierce, predatory expression. We call his bluff. Tomorrow morning, before his deadline, we hold another press conference. We present everything we have on Marcus Caldwell. We announce the DA's investigation. And we dare him to release his fake evidence while the world is watching. He'll do it out of spite, one of the lawyers warned. Let him, Arthur said. We'll have expert testimony ready to debunk every fabrication. We'll have real medical records, real financial statements, real witnesses, truth against lies. Adrian looked at Nia. This is your last chance to walk away. If we do this, Marcus will come after you with everything he has. I'm not walking away. Nia's voice was steel. I'm a nursing student who wants to help people. But I'm also someone who's learned that sometimes helping people means fighting the ones who hurt them. So let's fight. The press conference the next morning was packed, even more crowded than the last one. News of another major announcement had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to see what would come next in the ongoing saga. Adrian stood at the microphone, flanked by Nia, Arthur, Patricia, Jennifer Brooks, and 2 other business leaders who'd agreed to testify. The DA stood off to the side, a visible sign of official involvement. Thank you for coming, Adrian began. Today we're exposing a conspiracy that goes far beyond one corrupt professor or one student's fight for justice. Today we're revealing how one man, Marcus Caldwell, has spent years manipulating, blackmailing, and destroying people to consolidate power and wealth. He laid out the case methodically. Marcus's connection to Hawthorne, the payments traced to shell companies, the pattern of blackmail against business leaders. Jennifer Brooks spoke about her experience, her voice shaking but determined. The other business leaders shared similar stories. Then Patricia revealed the bombshell. We have evidence that Professor Elaine Caldwell's death, ruled an accident 15 years ago, may have been orchestrated by her husband. We're calling for the case to be reopened and investigated thoroughly. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. And then, in the back of the room, someone stood up. Marcus Caldwell himself. He was a tall man in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished-looking, with cold eyes and a contemptuous smile. This is quite the performance, he said loudly. But I think the people deserve to know the real story. He held up his phone. I'm about to release documents proving that Adrian Hale has been my business partner for years, that he hired me to eliminate obstacles to his success, including my own wife. I have financial records, emails, even recorded conversations. Release them, Adrian said calmly. Please, I insist. Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting that response. You're calling my bluff? I'm calling you a liar. Adrian's voice was hard. You have fabricated documents just like Hawthorne had fabricated medical records, but we have the real records and we have experts ready to authenticate them. So please, by all means, release your forgeries. Let the world see exactly how desperate you are. Marcus's confident expression faltered. He looked around the room, seeing cameras focused on him, reporters recording every word. the DA watching with interest. For the first time, he seemed to realize he'd walked into a trap. "This isn't over," he said, his voice tight with rage. "Yes, it is," Nia said, standing. "You tried to destroy me to get to Adrian. You used Hawthorne as a weapon, spread lies about both of us, and threatened innocent people. But we're still standing, and now everyone knows what you are." The DA stepped forward. "Marcus Caldwell, we'd like you to come with us for questioning regarding allegations of blackmail, conspiracy, and possible involvement in your wife's death." Marcus tried to run, but security guards blocked the exits. Within minutes, he was being escorted out of the auditorium in handcuffs, still protesting his innocence. The room was chaos, reporters mobbing the stage, students cheering, people crying from relief or shock. Nia found herself pulled into a hug by Jennifer Brooks, who whispered, "Thank you. I never thought I'd be free of him." Arthur embraced his son, both men holding each other tightly. Malik whooped with joy, filming everything on his phone. And Patricia allowed herself a small, satisfied smile as she fielded questions from the press. Later that evening, they gathered at the estate again, but this time, the mood was genuinely celebratory. Marcus was in custody. The DA had opened full investigations into both his activities and his wife's death, and Hawthorne had agreed to a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Marcus. "It's really over," Nia said wonderingly, sitting on the balcony with Adrian. "We actually won." "You won," Adrian corrected. "I just helped." "We won together, as equals." She smiled at him. "So what happens now?" "Now you finish your nursing degree. You become the student advisor you agreed to be. You change the healthcare education system from the inside." He paused. "And maybe, if you're willing, you help me expand my foundation. We could work together to identify and expose corruption at universities across the country." "I'd like that." Nia looked out at the city lights. "You know, 3 weeks ago, I had $43 in my checking account and no idea how I'd make rent. Now I'm sitting on a billionaire's balcony planning how to reform higher education. Life is strange." "Strange and wonderful." Adrian's voice was soft. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "When I saw you on that sidewalk, helping my father when everyone else just watched, that was the moment I remembered why I started fighting in the first place. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost. Hope that people still care about doing the right thing, even when it costs them." Nia felt tears prick her eyes. "You gave me something too. You showed me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, and that accepting help doesn't make you less strong. You showed me that I don't have to fight alone." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other through tragedy and pain, who'd fought together and won, who'd become something more than allies. They'd become friends, maybe even family. Inside, Arthur watched them through the window and smiled. His son had finally found his way back to the person he used to be before grief and anger hardened him. And Nia had found people who valued her, who fought for her, who would never let her be invisible again. The next morning, Nia returned to campus to find a small crowd waiting outside the nursing building. For a moment, she tensed, expecting protesters or reporters, but as she got closer, she realized they were students, dozens of them, holding signs that read, "Thank you, Nia," and "Justice for all students." One by one, they approached her. A Hispanic girl thanked her for exposing the discrimination that had nearly made her drop out. A white boy apologized for not believing her at first. A black woman in scrubs revealed she'd been a victim of Hawthorne's bias 3 years ago and had given up on nursing entirely. But Nia's fight had inspired her to reapply. By the time Nia reached her classroom, she was crying, overwhelmed by the realization that her struggle had meant something beyond just her own survival. She'd sparked a movement, started conversations, given other people courage to speak up about their own experiences. Professor Jenkins, her favorite instructor, was waiting at the classroom door. "Welcome back, Miss Carter. We've missed you." "It's good to be back." And Nia realized she meant it. This was where she belonged, learning, growing, preparing to help people. Everything else, the media attention, the investigations, the foundation work with Adrian, was important. But this was her foundation. This was her purpose. That evening, she got a call from the fellowship program Adrian had mentioned weeks ago, the one in Switzerland. They were offering her a spot for the following year, fully funded, with opportunities to study advanced nursing techniques and international healthcare systems. She stared at the email for a long time, then called Adrian. "Did you arrange this?" she asked when he answered. "I made an introduction," he admitted, "but they chose you based on your merits, your grades, your clinical experience, and what you've accomplished. The decision is entirely yours." Nia thought about it, the opportunity to travel, to learn, to see the world beyond her small neighborhood. A year ago, it would have been impossible. Even a month ago, it would have seemed like an impossible dream. But now, "I want to think about it," she said. "Talk to Malik, consider my options. Is that okay?" "Of course. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Adrian paused. "For the first time in my life, I have choices too. Real choices, not just reactions to trauma or guilt, and it's because of you. We saved each other," Nia said softly. "That's what friends do." A few days later, a helicopter landed in her yard again, but this time, Nia was expecting it. Adrian had called ahead, asking if she'd made a decision about Switzerland. She walked out to meet him, Malik following behind with a grin. Adrian stepped out of the helicopter, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely at peace. The tension that had always tightened his shoulders was gone. His smile reached his eyes. "So?" he asked. "What did you decide?" Nia smiled. "I'm going to finish this year first. Make sure the equity initiative is properly established, that the reforms are actually implemented. Then," she took a breath, "then I'm going to Switzerland. Because for the first time in my life, I actually have choices, real choices, and I'm going to take advantage of every single one." Adrian's smile widened. "That's the best decision you could have made." "There's one condition, though," Nia added. "You have to promise to keep fighting. Keep exposing corruption. Keep helping students who need it. Don't let this victory be the end. Let it be the beginning. I promise, on one condition of my own." Adrian extended his hand. "That you come back after Switzerland and help me build something bigger. A foundation that doesn't just react to corruption, but prevents it. That actually changes the systems that allow people like Hawthorne and Marcus to thrive." Nia took his hand and shook it firmly. "Deal." Malik whooped, and Arthur appeared from the helicopter behind Adrian, beaming. "I believe this calls for a celebration. What do you say? Dinner at the estate? And this time, we're ordering pizza." They all laughed, and as they walked toward the helicopter together, Nia, Malik, Adrian, and Arthur, Nia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Genuine, uncomplicated happiness. The helicopter rose above her neighborhood, the small duplex growing smaller below them. But Nia knew she'd be back, not as the struggling student who could barely make rent, but as someone who'd fought for justice and won, someone who'd found her voice and used it to make a difference. The city spread out beneath them, full of possibility and promise. And for the first time in her life, Nia felt ready to embrace whatever came next. If saving a life meant losing your future, would you still reach out your hand, or would fear make you walk away? Like and subscribe for more stories of courage against impossible odds.